Hello and welcome everyone to today's session where we're going to be reviewing the tenses again. Let me share my screen and show you what tenses we're looking at today. We're going to review the formulation and concept of present simple, I do, and present continuous, I'm doing, because these tenses often get confused with each other. So starting with formulation, looking at present simple, nice and simple, I, you, we, they, plus the base verb do, and he, she, it, plus the base verb do, and the little s that we must add to it for the third person singular pronouns. So I smoke, they grow, and she sings. Now, when we come to the present continuous tense, the formulation is always with the verb be. So you will have the verb be in your structure. I am, you, we, they are, he, she, it is. And then we add what we call the present participle to the verb be. And the present participle is composed of the base verb do and ing. So we end up with I am smoking, they are growing, she is singing. Now, in conversation particularly, it's more common to use the contracted form of the verb be in the present continuous tense. So it's better to say I'm smoking, they're growing, and she's singing. So that's the positive form of these two tenses. Now, looking at the negative sentences, for the present simple, because we can't see the help verb do in the positive sentence, we need to bring it in. So to make a negative sentence in the present simple tense, we need for I, you, we, and they don't, and for he, she, and it doesn't. So I don't smoke, they don't grow, and she doesn't sing. So be careful that our third person singular s has now joined the help verb. Do has become does. Don't has become doesn't. So don't keep the s on your base verb. Don't say she doesn't sings. That goes. It's she doesn't sing. Be careful, that's a tricky part of formulating the present simple tense. Now, coming to the present continuous, it's easier because our help verb, the verb be, is already in the positive sentence. All we need to do is to add the word not to the verb be. So I'm not smoking, they're not growing, and she's not singing. Now, again, here you have the option of keeping your verb be contracted. I'm not, they're not, she's not. Or you can have a contraction with the verb with not. You can contract not and say they aren't. Verb plus not, they aren't, she isn't. Just be careful that for I am not, there is no contraction. Ament doesn't exist. So we can't use that form for I. That's negative sentences. Coming to questions, again, for present simple, we need to bring in the hidden, invisible help verb do I, do we, etc. And for he, she, it does. There is the s of the third person singular on the does word. And again, no s on the base verb. So do I smoke? Do they grow? Does she sing? Present continuous, easier. You just move the verb be, the help verb be, to the beginning of the sentence. Am I smoking? Are they growing? Is she singing? Now, just two little notes about formulation before we go to concept. The first one is that you can also ask negative questions. So you can say, do you smoke, or don't you smoke? It indicates a little bit of a surprise, or you're a bit more inquisitive when you ask a negative question. Doesn't she sing? Aren't they growing? Now, be very careful that whether you ask your question with in the positive form, do you smoke, or negative form, don't you smoke, when you answer, if your answer is yes, it's I do, And if it's no, is I don't. Because sometimes I hear the mistake of someone saying, don't you smoke? Yes, I don't smoke, agreeing with the question. That sounds very, very strange. If your answer is positive, it must always start with yes. And if your answer is negative, it must always start with no, regardless of whether the question was positive or negative. And the last point about these negative questions is because am not has no contracted form. If you want to create a negative question with am and I, you only have the choice of saying, am I not doing it right? You can use the full form of not, like this, in other negative questions too, but the contracted form is more common. So usually we say, doesn't she sing? But you may hear, does she not sing? But notice that it sounds a little more formal. That's why it's less common. So that's all for formulation. Let's go to the differences in concepts. So present simple refers to facts, habits, and regular actions, whereas present continuous refers to an action in progress now, a temporary situation. Let's look at examples. I usually smoke 5 cigarettes a day, but these days I'm smoking only 3. That is a temporary situation. It may change back to 5. The usual situation is 5 cigarettes. The next example, they grow vegetables in their garden every year. So that's a regular action, a habit. But they're growing carrots and tomatoes this year, temporary situation. And next example, every Sunday, regular action, she sings in the choir, but she's singing her favorite song now. That's an action in progress. And this is a really important difference to be aware of and to apply when you speak in English. So, some notes and important considerations about these two concepts. The first one is that you have to remember that there are 2 types of verbs in English, action verbs and state verbs. What are action verbs, also called dynamic verbs? They're actions, they refer to an action that we can start and stop easily and relatively quickly, like that. We can switch between doing it and not doing it. Whereas a state or stative verb refers to a little more permanent, longer lasting physical, mental or emotional state. And why do we need to discuss these at this point, discussing 2 tenses, is because state verbs do not take continuous tenses. So let's look at our examples here. Currently, at the moment, I'm working, it's in progress, I'm working on my dissertation and I am happy with it. Although your happiness is in progress at the moment because the verb be is a state verb, we can't say I am being happy with it. The continuous form reverts back to its simple form. Next example. She's making a soup at the moment. It's an action. She can stop, she can start again. But now we're describing the smell of the soup. We can't say it is, although it's now, we can't say it is smelling great. You have to use the simple form because smell is a state verb. It smells great. And next example, action. He's resting now. He can stop, he can start again. Why? Because he has a headache. The verb have in its real meaning is also a state verb. So we can never say he is having a headache. So this is an important consideration. Now, maybe the good news is that there aren't many state verbs. 95% of verbs are action verbs, but there are some very important state verbs that you need to know and not put in the continuous tense, because that sounds strange. However, if sometimes you see or hear a state verb, like we just said, be and smell and have, there are state verbs, no continuous tense. If ever you hear or see these verbs in the continuous tense, it is because they have adopted an action meaning. They have changed their meaning. Let's look at the examples. For example, she is usually easygoing, but today, temporarily, at the moment, she is being difficult. Here, be is not about describing someone's general trait or personality. It's about their current behavior. Be means behave, and behave is an action verb, action idea. That's why it's now is being, right? It's much more uncommon, but if it happens, that's why I say when you hear it or see it, don't suddenly get confused. It's because the verb has changed its real or initial meaning. Next one, for example, I'm smelling the soup to guess its ingredients. This is not about the smell of the soup, it's about your action doing this, taking this object to close to your nose. That now it has an action idea, action meaning. And now we can put it in the continuous tense. I'm smelling this soup. And my last example, we're having dinner now, I'll call you later. Again, this is not the original idea of have, the main idea of have, but have meaning eat here, and that's why it's changed its meaning to an action verb. Now it can go in the continuous tense. So, having said that, there is this one verb you need to be careful of because it can confuse you, and it's the verb feel. That for some reason it can be used both in the simple form and the continuous form without changing its meaning. So you can say I feel great today, or I feel great now, or I'm feeling great today. But be careful that feel is also a synonym for think or believe, giving your opinion. And in that context is always a state verb, so it has to stay in the simple form. So it's I feel, like I think, I feel, I believe. That's a state, it's a mental state, it's an opinion, never continuous. I feel that this is a mistake, for example. Right, last thing I want to say is about these two verbs, live and work. Of course, they're action verbs, and like other action verbs, they can be in the simple form or in the continuous form. So when they're in the simple form, they express a fact about your life. I live in Cambridge. He works in an IT firm. If you put them in the continuous tense, then they will be expressing a temporary situation for you. For example, I'm currently living with my sister, or at the moment, he's working on the new website. Nice and easy. Why am I mentioning this? Because I often hear the mistake of saying things like that. Saying like, oh, I'm living in Sweden, where you really want to be saying, I live in Sweden. You're trying to give a fact of your life. And if you think, yeah, I'm living sounds good, and use that, you are confusing your listener. Or saying something like, I'm working in a bank, instead of I work in a bank. So if you use the continuous tense with these two verbs, which they sound good because they're needed sometimes in the continuous form, you are telling your listener about a temporary situation for you, not a fact of life. So be careful, because I do hear this mistake a lot. Right, that's the end of the lesson on the differences, both in formulation and concept of these two very important tenses in English in the present context. So I hope it has been helpful to you. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. For more on this topic, click here. Remember to also check out my complete online course, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy studies!